the teachings and history of the Bible.
Now setting up a Christian school in Las Vegas.
Some of us used to sell drugs, but no more.
Yo, Elevate, what's up? Woo! Well, prepare to leader up. Everyone say it with me, leader up. All right, look at a person close to you or yell over at them and say, leader up. Now look at the other person back and say, no, you leader up. Oh, man, you guys are in this today. All right, today we're actually on our third message of our Leader Up series. We have been Facebooking live all the messages, so you can go and check out the previous ones. Today we're talking about connecting with people, and I thought, if we're going to connect with people, we got to think about understanding ourselves first. And so I have some interesting facts about ourselves. Guys, you're going to love this. Sadly, by the time I finish today's message, 8 Americans, that's right, Americans, because I can't find stats on Canadians, that are alive right now will be dead from the food that they eat by the end of the day. 8 Americans will be dead at the end of today because of the food that they're eating. I don't know how, that's really bad food poisoning. I couldn't imagine what that is. Maybe it's them traveling. I don't know. I just found this stat. It was an interesting stat. You guys are going to like this here. Did you know that blinking is called a micro nap? That's right. Yeah, blinking is a micro nap. Now, you probably thought that when you blink, you just kind of get some moisture in your eyes, kind of get the dust out of them. But your blinking is a very valuable service to your body. In fact, they talk about that you will blink 15 to 20 times per second. That's 7 times more than you need to blink. And it actually sharpens your attention the more you blink because you are micro napping. So I give you permission not to nap today, but I give you permission to micro nap. Blink away if it sharpens your attention. Now, I didn't know if you knew this. This is what is interesting. I was young. I tried to tickle myself. You ever try to tickle yourself? You cannot tickle yourself. This is another, someone's obviously tried. There's an area in the back of your brain that monitors all the movement and predicts the sensation that you're going to feel when you attempt to tickle yourself, and it counteracts the other piece of the brain that needs to feel that sensation. So 2 people could do it, but you cannot do it to yourself. Now, some of you will like this piece. Did you know that your hair actually helps the environment? That's right, your hair. Now, I'm not doing very good at helping the environment, but your hair will help the environment. In fact, dirty hair can be good for the atmosphere, according to environmental engineers at the Missouri University of Science and Technology. They say hair absorbs the air pollutant ozone, the scalp oils that are found to be a major contributor to this. So if you want to do your part to help the local air quality, skip the shampoo, and more than anything, just don't wash your hair. That's why I did. Yeah, okay. And the last, I almost feel like, okay, thank you guys. I almost couldn't hear myself. Sneezes. Did you know sneezes? When someone sneezes, it can travel up to 20 feet. You may think you're safe when the guy across on the subway car, or the LRT as we call it, sneezes, but they did a video, and in the video they found that the sneeze traveled 20 feet. 20 feet. Now, my spit when I'm talking can travel about 10 feet, but I don't know about sneezing. So today I want to share with you guys on how to connect with people. How to connect with people. You ever hear the expression, everybody communicates, but nobody connects? Everybody communicates, but nobody connects. It's true, isn't it? Everyone talks. In fact, have you noticed that when some people talk, nobody's listening? They're communicating, but they're not connecting. In fact, you just want to raise your hand and say, okay, you can stop. If they say yes, say, please stop. You're not connecting with me at all. You're just communicating a bunch of nothing, a bunch of jarble. And in fact, maybe most of you are not used to this because you've not seen this show. This was a really old show. They tried to reprise it for a little while. But when I was young, they had a TV show called The Gong Show. You got to see kind of how this works. Let's go ahead and roll the clip.
Now that's a funny one. You folks, I mean, little midgets from... Ladies and gentlemen, a bundle of yucks. If ever there was one. Fred Tyson.
All those heads in West Virginia, riding mama, choo-choo waters. Life is dusty, dusty in the sky, dusty in the moonshine, teardrops in my eyes. Country roads, take me home to the place where I belong. West Virginia, riding mama, take me home. Country road, take me home. Country road, to the place where I belong. West Virginia, riding mama, take me home. Country road.
No.
That's the gong.
No. Michael, you, Fred, you beat the gong. You beat the gong, Fred, with your crooning. Very good. Step right up here. Pat, what do you think of old Fred?
I just told you what I thought.
Well, now, translate that into a number.
I got twice as good as a -1.
A zero, Fred. We can only go up. We can only go up. Pearl.
Oh, me? Yeah, well, you know, it's been so long, honey, since I did arithmetic, so I took 3/4 plus 1/4 equals 1.
You got a 1. See, we're going up. We're going up that old scale. J.P. Morgan. A 0. We went back down again. You have the lowest score we ever had on the Gong Show, Fred. It's a pleasure to have a new winner. A new record. Way to go. God doggone, a new record holder. 1. We never had 1. That's exciting.
That was one of the old clips. They got a few newer ones, but I had to show you the old. It was absolutely a crazy show. I was watching it in the late 70s when I was a kid. Tells you a little bit how old I am. But on the Gong Show, if they didn't want to hear you anymore, they just went and they gonged you. You know, you ever wonder why we don't have that in church? Sometimes when people get talking, you know, you're talking to someone, you're just like, I wish I had a gong for this guy. I wish I had a gong, you know, with it. But here's the truth, that none of us will ever be as good as all of us. None of us by ourselves is as good as all of us together. And that's why we need to connect with people. In fact, some of my best thinking is actually done by other people. My best thinking is done by other people. It's having those conversations and connecting with people from all walks of life and all different perspectives and personalities from different generations. And when you begin to put all those people together, you begin to connect with people in a different way. And then all of you together make a much more effective decision. You make a much better, effective team, and you get a lot more done. Now, here's a great truth. Jesus was the great connector. Jesus was the great connector. If you look at what the world has happened since the days of Jesus walking, since he died on that cross, you will look and say, how could one man have connected with millions and millions and millions and millions of people? He was the great connector. And if anyone should be able to connect, it really should be God's people. It really should be God's children. It should be his church. But to be honest with you, it's not even close. The church is probably one of the worst at actually connecting with people. So let me take a moment here. I'm just going to give you a little bit of a definition of connecting. Here's this word connecting. It's the ability to relate to and identify with people in such a way that it increases your influence with them. It's the ability to relate to and identify with people in such a way that increases your influence with them. We talked about in the last couple of weeks that leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. It's not about position. It's not about hierarchy. We all are called to lead in some form, in some fashion. So what we do with it, what we do with our connecting will change our influence and our sphere of influence in our life. Let's take a look at what Jesus said. I'm going to take 2 texts today I'm going to read from. And I'm going to read from the Message. I love the way it's worded here for us today. In Matthew 5 and starting in verse 13. It says, let me tell you why you are here. You're here to be salt. Listen to this, salt, seasoning that brings out the God flavors of this earth. If you lose your saltiness, how will people taste godliness? You've lost your usefulness and you'll end up in the garbage. That's pretty harsh. In 14, it goes on and says, here's another way to put it. You're here to be light, bringing out the God colors of the world, because God is not a secret to be kept. We're going public with this, as public as on a city on a hill. And if you make you light bearers, you don't think I'm going to hide you under a bucket, do you? I'm putting you on a light stand. Now that I've put you there on a hilltop, on a light stand, shine. Shine. Keep open house. Be generous with your lives by opening up to others. You're going to prompt people to open up with God. The generous Father in heaven. He wanted them to be salt and light. To be salt and light is connecting. Believe me, when you taste something with salt, it changes. It connects you to what you're going to eat because there's now flavor in it. Believe me, when you walk into a dark room, this morning we came in, we didn't have keys, and all the lights were out. The moment the light came, we connected. We were able to start working. But if you don't have the lights on, and that is the thing that God calls us to. He calls us to be salt and light. He wants us to connect in such a way so that we can fulfill the Great Commission. He wants us to connect in such a way. There's nobody that's going to be exempt from connection. So I want to give you 3 connecting thoughts today. And these thoughts can be applied to your spiritual life. They can be applied to your business life. They can be applied to your family life. But these 3 connecting thoughts, you need to take these today and begin to think and meditate and ponder these thoughts that I want to give you. So let's go to the first one. Connecting is all about others. The first thought you need to know about connecting, it's all about others. That's really your great foundation of connecting, because it's not about you. Connecting is not about you. It's not about me. It's all about others. In my late 20s, living in Manitoba, we had started our first church, and I didn't really understand this principle as well as I thought I did at the time. I was trying to get others to buy into my vision. I wanted to get them to buy into the way that I saw things and what I felt God was saying. And so I was trying to gather because I heard that they will follow the vision. Well, I was constantly working hard to get that buy-in. And it was interesting because as you're trying to get that buy-in, you're saying things like, come on, team, come on, you know you can do it. Don't you want to be a part of something good? Get on the E train. That would be the Elevate train. There we were like, get on the W train. But I was doing everything. I was trying to motivate. I was trying to really encourage people. Sometimes you get behind people. Come on. When I'm hiking, when I'm with my wife, Mary Lou, sometimes I just get behind and then we go a little bit faster. Sometimes we do that with each other, don't we? We just get behind and go, I can't do it. I'll help you, right? But then we start pushing. And then somebody gets hurt sometimes when we start pushing. That's one of the interesting things. And there was a quote that I read that really changed my life. And this is the quote. If you'll help people first get what they want, they will help you get everything that you want. If you help people get first what they want. And that's hard because we look at people and we say, well, they're just selfish. But remember, a leader. The word leader in ancient times when kings did not stay at home, they went out to war. It was to go forth and die. That's what a leader was. That's what a leader is. They put their life aside because it's all about others. And it literally changed my life, this quote. It was my aha moment that I had when it came to leadership. Many times I see leaders and they're on this mountain and they're waving down at everyone. Hey, friends, come on up here. Come on up. And they'll say things like, it's lonely at the top. But a leader never said that. Leader never said it's lonely at the top. If you're at the top alone, you're not a leader, you're a hiker. You just hiked your way to the top all alone. And so don't call yourself a leader because you're up there. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. In my younger years, I was just trying to get to the top. I was getting to the top, and it didn't matter who was coming with me. I just asked, do you want to join me? And they either joined me or they didn't. So it was more about motivation instead of actually being a leader. And I tried to get them on the train because I didn't understand that to get to the top of the hill, we needed each other. Not to mention, it's much safer when you travel together as you get to the top. But here's the thing. Did you know one of the reasons leaders never cross the finish line first is because leaders are not running. They're not running for first. Leaders always cross the finish line later because they're bringing people with them. If your goal is to cross that finish line first, that's not leadership. Leadership is to bring the people with you at the same time. It doesn't matter how long it takes. Now, when I look back, I think, why didn't I understand that? And I think the reason I didn't understand this is because I was just immature. Now, my wife would disagree. She'd still say I'm a lot of times immature. But immature people really think of themselves first, don't they? They really do. They're immature because they haven't learned yet. They're still immature in their life because they think of themselves first. That's what makes them immature. And I know some of you are saying, well, just give them a chance. Let them grow up. Well, they're going to get a little older and they're going to mature, but sometimes age doesn't follow. You can age, but maturity does not follow age. Maturity doesn't always follow age. You can get older and you can be just as immature as you were 10 years ago or 20 years ago or 30, 40, or some of you 50 maybe. But they think of themselves first. I have to tell you, I have 9 grandchildren, if you don't know this already. With our 9 grandchildren, all beautiful babies, when the cousins get together, they like to have fun. They like to play. A couple of years ago, because they love to have fun and play, and of course, they love playing with Nana and Papa. Because, of course, Nana and Papa were created for the grandchildren to have fun. That's just the way life is made. You know, and often our oldest, Radley and Callista, they would come over and they'd say, Papa, play with me. Nana, play with me. You know, they call me Papa. Originally, when we were trying to decide what we were going to be called, my wife says, I want to be Mimi, but I don't want him to call you Pee-Pee. I agreed. I said, no, that's a good idea. So I went with Papa, and she went with Nana. I think it was a good decision. So every day that Radley and Callista come over to play, especially if they're together, and sometimes they're alone, but when they come together, we were created, Nana and Papa, to serve them, to care for them, to take and do everything with them. So they were 3 and 5 approximately at the time, and they'd say, Nana or Papa, who they'd ask us a question. Of course, if one doesn't give them the answer they want or go play with them, they're going to go to the next person, and that next person then will play with them. Because obviously, Nana won't play with me. And I'm like, well, I guess I don't have a choice then, you know, because we were created for you, and so obviously we'll play with you. And, of course, I want to have the attention. So if they want to play, usually it seemed to be a tea party often. It was always a tea party. And I realized that's our responsibility, is to spoil the grandchildren and make their life fun, because we didn't do that for our kids, so we'll do it for the grandchildren. After all, isn't that what grandparents are for? And every day they'd come over and play, and what would happen is, I promise you, the moment we'd start to play, one of them would come up and say, Papa, I'm hungry. I'm like, oh. And I knew what that would meant when they said, I'm hungry. It mean, Papa, I need a snack. And, of course, Nana has this cupboard. And this cupboard's called the snack cupboard. It's really the grandchildren. I got my hand slapped for putting my hand in there one day. It's just for those grandchildren. Which means they'll come over to our house and they'll go straight to Nana's snack cupboard. That's just the first thing that they do when they come over there. You know, and every time, it doesn't matter what it is. It's always going to be juice box, granola, and candy. That's what Nana and Papa feed them. Now, I know what you're thinking. That's not a very healthy diet. I know. I don't care. I'm a grandparent. And besides, we fed our kids healthy, and it never worked for them. So, anyway, being a grandparent, there was one rule that we have with the kids. Now, it was always hard, but there was always this one rule, and that's they couldn't tell. Because parents are weird that way. You know, they're worried about their kids eating at the meal times. And so every time during the meal, You know, we had this little thing, and they'd look at Nana or I'd look at Papa, and Mom and Dad would say, well, why aren't you hungry? What's wrong? And they'll look at you, and they'll wink and give you a thumbs up. And then we look back. That was our little thing together, right? And so we always took care of them. But I'm going to tell you, not one time did Radley or Callisto or any of the other grandchildren come up and did they say, Papa, we've been thinking. Nana, we've been thinking. You know, you've done so much for us. What can we do for you? Not once. Not once. See, it doesn't enter a child's mind at all. And that's okay when they're 3, and that's okay when they're 5. But it's not okay when they're 35, and it's not okay when they're 45 or 55, and they're still thinking the same way. Connecting is all about others. It's always about others. Leaders understand that. If you're going to take up that mantle of leadership, you know you got to give up the right to yourself first. See, when people talk who should lead in the family, I say you both should lead. It's called team leadership because you both have to give up because it's all about the other when you come into a marriage. Leaders understand the day they become leaders, they no longer get to think about themselves first. They think about everybody else around them. Doesn't matter in your place of business, in your place of work, you need to think about the people that are working for you, that are working under you, that you're supervising, that you're managing. It's their life. Their life is even more important than yours. You're like, well, I don't know it's like that. I know. No one says that we like it, but that's how it works. It's all about their wants. It's not about your needs. It's about thinking of others even greater than ourselves. And I believe if Jesus was here today and he was talking to us about leadership, he would tell you and I that leadership is servanthood. He'd say that leadership is servanthood. It's not about titles, it's about towels. Your title doesn't mean a single thing. What does a title mean? What does a title mean? Does it make you feel better? Now, there's nothing wrong with titles. No, don't get me wrong. I think that they're wonderful. They give recognition to what somebody is doing. But it's more about the servanthood than the position that you see yourself in. You know, years ago we met this one wonderful family. And we spent some time with the wife. She was a wonderful woman. Her husband traveled a lot. He wasn't home often. She decided to start coming back to church. It had been probably about 4 or 5 years. And she says, but my husband will never go to church because he's too angry at God. He'll never walk in the doors of a church again. He's told me that. We fought over this, and I know he won't, so I just didn't go. And so she started coming out. And I asked her one day, I said, when your husband gets home, do you think that he would meet with me? And she's like, well, I can ask him. I don't know. He's been pretty hurt. Well, he ended up agreeing. And so when he got home, we went out. I took him out for lunch. He returned home from the road. And while we were out there, we had a fabulous conversation. I was learning all about him. He was learning a little bit about me during this time. And then he came out and he says, listen, I can't stand preachers. I just can't stand them. They stand in those pulpits and they're holier than thou. And I'm going to tell you, I had a bad experience once when I was called out on something that I did right in the middle of a church service. He goes, I'm not into that hypocritical life like all those Christians. And I was like, okay, I get it. It sounds like you don't trust pastors. And so I said to him, I want you to know that I have no inner motives. I'm not trying to get you out to church. I just want to connect with you. This is all about you. This is not about me. This is not about the church. This is all about you. And I said, because of your bad experience, I'm not going to share my faith with you at all. In fact, I'm not going to share my faith with you until you're ready. And one day you're going to have to ask me. And he looked at me and he says, yeah, whatever. At the end of the conversation, a half an hour later, he says, by the way, do you want to share your faith with me? I know you were wanting to. And I looked at him and I said, you're not ready. And he laughed, just like you're laughing right now. And he goes, okay, whatever. A week later, we got together again. This time, halfway through it, he says, tell me a little bit more about your faith. And I said, nah, you're not ready. He was like, come on, man. I think we're connecting. I want to hear more. I like what I see. And I'm like, I know you do, but you're not ready. It was about a month later, he came home from the road. He got on that phone and he called me, and I heard desperation in his voice. He goes, Evan, we got to meet. We got to go for a coffee. I drove out and I met him. His marriage was falling apart. And halfway through that conversation, I stopped it and I said, listen, you're ready. And I began to share my faith. And right there and then in that restaurant, he made a decision to be a follower of Jesus. That is all about others. That was not about me. That was not about anything with the church. That was about a person, and each life matters. Doesn't matter how angry they are. Doesn't matter what there's going on in their life, good or bad. Each life matters. The life behind you, in front of you, to the side of you, that life matters. That person. Look at someone and say, you matter. Yeah, well, man, you guys are into it today. But I remember not all the time when you have a situation like that does you find strength, and do you find a happy ending. But they made it work, and they restored their marriage and their family. And that was a wonderful story in my life. But you know what? If I was insecure, if I had said, listen, not all preachers are the same. I'm not like everybody else. That would have been about titles, not about towels. But I took towels in instead of title, because title didn't matter. It was all about people. Let me give you the next text that I want to give you today. In Matthew 20 and 24 to 28, let's break it down in the Message. He says, you've observed how godless rulers throw their weight around. Remember what I said about position. Know quickly, a little power goes to their heads. It's not going to be that way with you. Whoever wants to be great must become a servant. Whoever wants to be first among you must be your slave. I feel like that sometimes, hon. Just joking. I'm sure she feels the same. That is what the Son of Man has done. He came to serve, not to be served. He came to serve, not to be served. Who are we trying to be like? We're trying to learn the example of Jesus. And he says, and then to give away his life in exchange for the many who are held hostage. And we were held hostage because of our sins that separated us from God. And he put his life on the line. Let me give you the second connecting thought. Is connecting requires energy. You ever notice that? If you want to spend time connecting with someone it's going to require energy in your life. One of the reasons we don't connect as much as we should or we could is because there's a tremendous requirement of energy, and we are drained. We're just drained. Can I say the only difference between a great dating relationship and a marriage is that you worked harder while you were dating? That's it. I'm sorry, but if you get married and it's harder, writing on a piece of paper and signing and having this special ceremony doesn't make it harder. It's because you're not working harder because it requires energy. Every day you used to get up and say, how can I please her? What can I do for her? What can I buy for her? You had all those thoughts in your head. How can I add value to her today? And then you get married and you're like, whoa. What, are you going to meet my need or what? We just change. This is like, what happened? I remember getting a call one day from my father-in-law to meet with this one couple, and they were really needing to make their relationship work, and their foundation was cracked before it even began. The first meeting we had to cancel because she had relapsed the night before. She couldn't be found. We sat in our living room with a broken man, a father of a 1-year-old child, fearful that his girlfriend would maybe not even make it home again. He wanted to make this work, but he was deep down inside really hurting. And then what was interesting, it was both their addictions that brought them together, but it was her addiction that was driving them apart. We had several counseling sessions. She came home a couple weeks later, several with the two of them over the next months. And then she was gone again, back on the streets. And we had several times I would meet him, connect with him, pray with him, watch his child for him when he went out to look for his fiancée. And I remember saying to Mary Lou one day, hon, I don't have any more energy to help them anymore. I am drained. And I know she says, I know how you feel. We never saw either one for quite a while. It was almost a year later, and we'd been growing weary, and now we hadn't saw them in probably 7 months, and one Sunday morning they came out to a Sunday morning church service, and they looked good. They looked healthy. And I think inside I was still a little skeptical, and we still lost contact after that day because they ended up moving. I was really worried that he'd have no supports around him when they moved, but we didn't hear from them for quite a while. And then I heard they were in Calgary, and so I was able to arrange a connection through a phone call. I called them up, and I went to see them. They were now married. They had another child, and they were hosting a small group for their local church for married couples. That was amazing. 4 years later, I checked in again because I just had to see what was happening. That was a lot of energy. I wanted to check on all that energy I put out. 4 years later, they're now running the marriage ministry at their church. And they have another kid. God is amazing. But what's amazing is when you let God work. That means you do the work that's required. That took energy. Again, every time you put energy out, you don't always see the results that you always want. But things begin to change. I could have said, well, this was inconvenient. But this is what connection is all about. And I have one more connecting principle that I want to finish with here today. But let me ask you a question before I give it. Are you learning something? Okay, now look at the person beside you and ask them, are you learning something? Yeah, that's good. Now look back at that person that asked you that question and say, not near enough. You're not connecting with me yet. Okay, number three. Number three, connectors find common ground. If you're a connector, you're going to find common ground. Without common ground, you can't get to higher ground. If you're going to get to higher ground, you got to find the common ground first. That's when you find that Paul, and I don't have this on there for you, do your homework. Paul says, I am all things to all people. He had to find common ground. Now, he's not bending the rules. He's just being himself and trying to find out, how do I connect? How do I relate? Some people don't even take the time to relate or to connect. I see people do this all the time. We see it in family. We see it in business. People understand that they got to find common ground, and it's huge. Now, if I had more time, I'd cover several ways to find common ground. But today, for the purpose of time, we're just going to talk about one area to find common ground. And this is the thing. If you want to lift people to higher ground, and it is lifting because it's work, remember, it's energy. If you're going to do that, you're going to have to find this common ground. And so when you came in here today, one of the things when you came in and you walked in here today, you kind of connected because you're in a church. And the common word that finds common ground in church, it's called relationships. Relationships. So I know you, I see you, some of us are acquaintances, some of us have spent more time. And when you have, that usually tells you that you're connecting. You're connecting based on a relationship. Now, if you spend more time in the relationship, you'll go to a higher ground. Some of you wonder why you struggle in the relationships and why you don't have the relationships. And it goes back to, it's all about other people. It's not only all about other people, but maybe one of the reasons is you don't want to spend the energy. But you got to find that common ground. And one of those is relationships, and relationships takes more energy. So you got to come back and understand that. But over this last little bit of time, I want you to know that when you find common ground and you lift people to a higher ground, you begin to look at that person differently. When they find that higher ground, because now you esteem them, you respect them, you look up to them, you're proud of them for stepping up to the higher ground. You're excited to tell people the stories about them. In these last couple minutes, let me just tell you what the common ground, though, is outside of the church. One of the places you're going to find common ground, and it's a word called respect. In the business world, in our society, it's called respect. It's not about relationship. Relationship is in the church, but the word for common ground you're going to find is respect. When you begin to offer respect to someone, to give them respect, and some people say, well, they're going to have to earn my respect. Well, that's fine. But the truth is giving them more respect even when they don't look like they deserve it. Now, let me get this right. We don't respect someone for nothing at all. but we do respect for some things, even if we see other struggles. Let me share really quickly in my closing here a story that I found years ago. I'm going to refer to a gentleman that I knew quite well. We're going to call him Paul today. That wasn't his name. But his name is Paul, and he came with a reputation as a know-it-all. He was a little bit of a rebel, and definitely he was abrasive, and he was short with people. But he was really good at his job. He came with a lot of experience. He had a Bachelor of Arts in psychology. He had another Bachelor of Arts in business management. He had worked in human service field for over 10 years. But you know what I recognized? And I respected all his experience he had. I respected all that he had learned in his education. But one of the things is he was misunderstood. And so I decided to think about what we just talked about here. I decided to put energy. I decided to meet him on common ground with respect. You know, some days were more trying than others with him. I knew one thing was for sure, is that every day I went in, I wasn't going to react. I was ready for his abrasiveness. And eventually, because I took the time and it was all about him, we were able to have a little bit more in-depth thought and conversation. To the point one day I had enough in the relationship, enough clout, if you want to say, enough love in that relationship, that I was able to make a withdrawal from the bank that day. And I said, dude, people are hating you. They don't love on you. They don't care about you. And it's because of the way you treat them. You have all this experience and you have all this education, but what good does it do when nobody's working with you? You can change. You can change the culture. You can change the environments. I see what you can do. And the truth is, most people would never have started there. I worked under him. But it didn't matter I was under him. I still was able to influence. And that influence took a whole new place when he began to make those subtle changes. A little change here, a little change there. And people started wanting to work with him. They wanted to work under him. And they started rising up and getting promotions and jobs. And he himself, it's like nothing could hold him back from the opportunities. He's had some incredible opportunities in his life. I follow him a little bit here and there on Facebook. I'm kind of that silent guy on the side. Nobody needs to know. It doesn't matter. I'm so excited and I'm so proud of where he's come and what he's doing today and what changed in his life. But the truth is, slowly by slowly, month by month and year by year, things will change. But you got to find common ground. We cannot take people to a higher ground until we leader up. We got to become a leader. It's all about influence. Let's influence the others around us. Let's be that servant that Jesus talks about. You know, I think the wonderful thing about Jesus is how he's so amazing and he's so intentional. Amen. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you, God, today that in all that we say and all that we do, you want to connect with us. You're reaching out to us and wanting to connect. And Father, I pray today that we would take more time to connect with you. That we would take more time and have a moment like this in prayer. Just between us and just between you. Father, there's those here today and they haven't had these kind of conversations, but they've wanted to. And for whatever reason, it's not happening. But today, God, they want to make that change. And if that's you and you agree in your heart and in your spirit that today's that day that you're to say, I'm going to start connecting with Jesus. I know that he died for me. I know that everything that separated me from God with the things that I've done, how I've missed my purpose, I've missed my mark. I'm ready today to start following him, to be a genuine, authentic Jesus follower. And I'm going to put the energy in. I'm going to focus and know it's not about me. It's all about God's people. And so, Father, today I thank you for that. Father, I ask that you would help us. Help all of us here today to be wise. Help us to be prayerful. Help us to be strategic in connecting with people. I pray you start putting people in our path. If they're not already there, Lord, those that have been saying, I need to connect with someone, Father, send someone. God, that they would see that. I also pray, God, for those that are saying, wow, I didn't know the people around me. I never even thought about each opportunity. God, start to show them the current relationships that they have that they need to start connecting with in a genuine and authentic way. Father, strengthen us in all that we're doing as we lead her up. In Jesus' name.